Hey, my name's Haley, and today I'm going to go over the basics of editing keyframes in After Effects. So to start off, I just put a white solid down, and then I just put text that says hello in order to show you guys how you can keyframe everything. So if you click this little arrow, and then you click on the transform, these are all the things that I'm going to be teaching you about. We're going to go over anchor point, the position, the scale, the rotation, and the opacity. These are all kind of like the beginner things that you can keyframe. So we can see these little stopwatch buttons, and if you click those, that basically puts down a keyframe on the timeline for you. So let's say that we wanted to start at the beginning, and we want to go a few seconds over, and click this diamond button, and that will add another keyframe. So let's just say that we wanted to move our anchor point all the way over here. This is what it's going to look like. So instead of it moving your position around, this is moving the anchor point around, which is this little guy right here. Now next is the position. So let's say that we want to have our text all the way to the left and we want to have it fly in to the middle. So what you're going to want to do is put a keyframe on the position, go 2 seconds in advance or 1 second in advance, click the diamond again to make another keyframe, and you're going to want to go back to the very beginning keyframe and bring it wherever you want it to scroll in from. So I want it to go from the left to the right. So now that I have those keyframes in there, I'm going to play. And then you have your text scrolling in. Now there's different ways that you can make it look better than this, because this is kind of just like a basic transition. But if you highlight both of the keyframes and push F9, this adds an auto Bezier kind of effect so that it's a smoother transition. See how at the very end it goes a little bit slower, so it goes from fast to slow? That just makes it a lot more seamless. The next thing we're going to go over is the scale. So we're going to put a keyframe at the beginning and a keyframe 1 second in advance. Then you're going to want to go back to your first keyframe and go to 0. This is if we want it to zoom in. Now, as you can see, it's not very smooth again, so what we're going to do is highlight both of those keyframes and push F9. And now it's a lot smoother. So another thing you can do that's a little bit more advanced is to highlight both of your keyframes and click on Graph Editor. And this lets you really customize how you want your transition to come in. So for me, I really like to do this. I drag the one on the left up like this, and I drag this one all the way over here. And this just makes the beginning of the transition go a lot faster than the end. So it goes from fast to slow. So it looks like it's kind of popping up onto your screen. And there are a lot of different things you can do with these. You can really play around with them if you want to try different things out. The next thing that we're going to talk about is rotation. You can click the stopwatch and then make one more keyframe. And we're going to add another one this time. So go to your first keyframe and you're going to want to turn it a little bit. And once you get to the middle, you're going to want to turn it the other way. Once you get to the very end, you're going to want to turn it back to that first way again. Highlight all of the keyframes and press F9. And this creates a little wiggle. If you want it to keep going for longer, all you need to do is just add another keyframe and keep making it go back and forth between all of the keyframes. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the opacity. You're going to want to click on the stopwatch and then go ahead about a second and click on the diamond to add another keyframe. And you're going to want to go back to the first keyframe and set the opacity to 0%. Now if you highlight both and push F9, this makes it fade in. And if you add another 2 keyframes, you can make it fade out by putting the second one to 0 opacity. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is motion blur. If you click this, that turns on the motion blur. For each layer, you're going to have to click this to turn the motion blur on for that certain layer. So let's say that I wanted to do the zoom effect again. I'm going to click the stopwatch here, create another keyframe, go to the first one and put the scale to 0, highlight them both and push F9. And if you see, that adds a motion blur to it. If I uncheck this, it's just going to zoom in with no motion blur at all. And if I click that, it adds the motion blur. And adding a motion blur to your transitions makes it look a lot more professional and it makes it a lot smoother. Now, if you really wanted to, you can combine a lot of these in order to make a different looking kind of transition. So just as an example, I'm going to add in a few. So I'm going to do the scale, rotation, and opacity. So I'm going to set the scale keyframes and then put the first one to 0. And then as it zooms in, I'm going to change the rotation a bit. So I'm going to put keyframe at the beginning of the rotation, and then I'm going to put one the same spot as the scale rotation. I'm going to set the first one just a little bit off so that when it zooms in, it's coming on an angle. And then I'm going to set the opacity and put one in the middle there. Set the first one to 0%. And then as it comes in, it's also becoming less transparent. Now I'm going to highlight all of these keyframes and push F9. And then that's the final result. Thanks so much for watching, and if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the Film Kit for Kids YouTube. See you guys!